Hey, it's Moe Ari
and Tiffany.
and you're listening to the #LoveGoals podcast. Before we get into this episode, I just want you to remember that every human, regardless of identity, needs these three things: belonging, authenticity, and love.
And after a decade of partnership, we've learned to co-create these things and so much more.
So from wherever you're listening, we're going to go on a journey of becoming our own #LoveGoals. Now let's get into this episode. Hey, it's Moe Ari
and Tiffany.
And you are listening to the #LoveGoals podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. We have been sitting here chatting about, plainly put, gender. I think it's been, of course, it's on my mind a lot because I identify as non-binary transgender and I was assigned female at birth. And I won't go into my whole story here, but it's relevant that when I met Tiffany, I was femme presenting. I had long hair. I wore mini skirts. And so there's a lot of things that has changed since the beginning of our relationship. But including my gender, including roles in our relationship. The reason why this topic feels extremely important is because gender has this way of informing our social relationships from the very beginning. So when we're not aware of those social roles and how gender is showing up, it can really be detrimental to a relationship. So I wanted to just start with a conversation with you about that, about gender identity and how our relationship has grown over time, and then see if we can share some things with our listeners about gender and how they can take a deeper dive into that.
Yeah, so I feel like, to be very honest, I don't know that I thought about gender a lot in the beginning of our relationship. It wasn't like I knew. Yeah, I didn't really think about it a lot. I think as you begin to transition and as, we've gotten older and evolved, it's become more present on my mind. And the reason it has become more present is because I think about these like societal gender roles as you become more masculine outwardly, that I'm like, did I ever imagine myself doing that thing based on what society said? I didn't necessarily realize how ingrained maybe some of these gender roles or societal ideas about, what a woman does, what a man does, what anybody does, obviously, based on gender. I didn't realize how much of that was ingrained in me or that was in my mind until that point in our relationship. So I've been forced and continue to, like, till this day, be like, is that something there that's like societal? Because it's not something that I necessarily care about, but like, it feels like this is a general consensus of society, Yeah. So I'm trying to think of an example. I think when we think about, I feel like I keep using this example, but when you think about parenting, for instance, I always thought, not necessarily saw, but I thought, the mother does this thing, the father does this thing. That's how it is. It's going to be 50-50 at any given time. I mean, even in relationship, I feel like in the earlier parts of our relationship, I just thought everything would be like 50-50, right? And it was a very like, that's what my mom said. That's what people in my family said. But I didn't really see that ever happening. Like, now that I think about it, like, was that really what was happening?
No,
it was like, legitimately, it was not. And I realized just how much is not, in this particular example, is not just like this person in the relationship doing half and this person in the relationship doing half. It's more like each person doing 100% of their strengths or the things that they can do towards a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And that has been a game changer for me. I feel like it kind of ripples down and helps me combat some of those other gender things that I have. But I feel like
Yeah.
that was foundational for me because at the basic level, the
Yeah.
very, very basic, I was like, well, you do that, have, you do have, we do have, and then that makes a whole.
Yeah. I
Mm-hmm.
think that what you're saying is accurate, that
Mm-hmm.
we've not actually probably seen that done
Yeah.
because it's impossible to divide your relationship 50-50 down a gender line.
Impossible.
That's where we're going wrong
Yeah.
because, like you said, in relationship, we have to operate from strength.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're basing the roles and responsibilities in the relationship on gender, that's
Mm-hmm.
literally crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been done from generation to generation to generation. But the world has changed so much. It's different when it's like, okay, who's gonna scare off the bears? The tallest, biggest person. Okay, go.
Yeah.
Now in the Amazon kingdom, I don't think that that's how it went.
Yes.
It wasn't the men, but like
Right.
let's say like in most societies, it would be
Mm-hmm.
the tallest, biggest person
Mm-hmm.
that can scare the bear.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally what you do to scare a bear is get big
Mm-hmm.
on them. So
Mm-hmm.
you need the biggest person to go out
Right.
there. It's usually
Right.
men. So that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. But now that we're in a different kind of society, we're not actually scaring bears away. We're not out in the wild. Why would the roles not change?
Mm-hmm.
Why would they not shift for us to operate in strength?
Yeah.
And so if you're not having to scare bears away, I know that a lot of times that what that ends up meaning is that a lot of times I think masculine people don't always know what our role is if we're honest. Like if she doesn't need me to scare bears away, and I'm using she intentionally here to say like quite often we're in relationship with like feminine identified people that use she, her pronouns, or they.
Yeah.
But let's say in this example that we're talking about a hetero relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Masculine people don't always know how they can be valued if they're not scaring the bears away. I think that's like a generational thing passed down. We're not working with our hands because we're using our minds and our intellect these days,
Yeah.
or we're not doing some hard physical labor like, going out hunter gathering or working on a railroad or whatever the labor has looked like in the past. Because now we're in suits and ties. We don't always know
Yeah.
how to be comfortable in that and moving away from rugged masculinity as like the standard and what those
Yeah.
roles would have been. So a lot of times we're still trying to apply those same things to what we're doing in the world now. You're getting pedicures so that your feet look nice. It's okay if you're not out here a lumberjack.
Yeah.
But we don't have to show up in the relationship like we're still trying to be lumberjack, but we know we would much rather
Yeah.
have emotions and sit there and watch the shows that our partners want to watch. And I'm saying a lot here, but what I'm really trying to say is that gender roles end up hurting us more than we realize because they're often constricting. Anytime we're putting a type or a category on something, a lot of times it's limited. And so what we do with gender roles is often uh, assign relationship functions to those identities, and they put everybody in a box, and they're not always the strength based.
No.
So if your partner, let's say your masculine partner, is not good with money, don't have him in charge of your finances. I don't care about his gender. Just don't.
Period.
Period, Pooh. If your feminine identified partner is not a great cook, thou shall not be in charge of the cooking.
Thou shall not. Yeah.
Does that make sense? I can feel the head nods across the airwaves. Yes.
No, it makes a lot of sense.
So I'm all about flipping these things on their head for a number of reasons. One, because I'm a non-binary person sitting here, but also two, because I've seen even how for cisgender hetero people, this has been harmful, confining. Think about like from the very beginning of your relationships, Tiffany, you're cisgender. But think about from the very beginning of time, you had messages that you received about how you needed to wear your hair.
Exactly.
Who you could be friends with, what activities you could participate in, what you should be interested in, what colors you needed to like, and so on and so on and so on. Think about how restricting that was for a kid that just wants to play in the mud, make mud pies, walk around with your feet getting dirty. And they were like, do not do that. Girls don't do that. Or whatever messages. I'm not saying they said that.
No, you're right though.
So I think that that's even you're cisgender. So it has nothing to do with you being trans or something that you don't like those things. That's just not you. So what gender does is it often prevents us from being in our full authenticity. You don't have to be genderqueer or transgender to want to wear your hair short like you do as a woman.
Right, right.
But these are things when you're a kid doing them that feel extremely intimidating to the gender role set by society. If you want to cut your hair and you're a little black girl, they're going to be questioning your sexual orientation, your gender. Are you a stud then? You are the farthest thing from a stud, but look at you wearing your hair short. That's why we have to turn this stuff on its head, because what does that even tell me about you? What would that even tell me about your role in the relationship? So we're doing a lot of work here. I talked a lot here. I want to hear your thoughts, Tiff.
No, I think you're right, Mo. And even taking it a step further, I feel like some of these gender roles weren't just even based on, like, for example, some of these gender roles were not even just based on what a man does, for instance, or what a woman does, but this makes you superwoman or like more ladylike or more this if you do this thing, or even categories within the specific gender of a person.
Yeah.
And so I think it's been very like, I see just how I was raised and like the messages that I got, how much that still plays out. Like, I talk to you often about just even my ideas about cleaning and how I feel like the house is representative of me, as if I'm the only person that lives in the house, and that, if the house is not in a particular way, I'm working through negative self-talk, but like, it's like, well, you got a dirty house, or your dishes are full, or it's just so deeply rooted. And
it's a generational thing too.
Yes. And it's so much a part of gender, because the messages I got were that the woman keeps the house clean, period. Like, that's how it goes. And so that puts huge pressure, huge responsibility on this one person. But you're in a relationship, or you're in a marriage, or you have a family with kids, and it's also just your house is not a representation of your character and who you are as a person. But that's another story for another day. But I agree. Those things are so deep rooted, and I uncover them every single day.
Yeah, no, and I'm never asking you to clean.
No.
I think I'm like extremely clean. I like things to look a particular way. And so that's just not even a role in our relationship, but it goes to show how that has been passed down, and you've kind of like internalized that as your responsibility just because of the sex you were assigned at birth.
And you never had a conversation where you were like, cleaning is yours, this is my, never has that happened. Ever in the history of our relationship.
Right. And I think particularly, if I can shift, just being a person of the LGBTQ plus community, but the both of us, how preposterous would it be if we further these particular roles in our relationships, given that our anatomy is similar? Let's say we're in a relationship and we are a same gender loving couple, as we used to be. And before, let's say in hetero relationships, essentially what's happening is, okay, all the vaginas sweet, all the penises go work. So in a same gender loving relationship, why would we divide ourselves up that way? We can't. So then we go, okay, the masculine people, you do this. We should just stop doing it. It doesn't make sense for us. We actually have the opportunity to change it. We have the opportunity to do something different. Everybody does, but even more so for us, the slate is wiped clean, where we don't even have those gender roles, or we don't have to have them coming in. But so much of it is so internalized by our society. So I'm saying this to say that we all have to intentionally do the work. I don't want my LGBTQ plus people to leave this episode thinking that they're off the hook, because we're not. We perpetuate the same things, and to certain degrees though, right? Because however you identify is how you identify. And I'm sure that it changes how your expression of that is. But particularly for, cisgender hetero people, I do think that there's a little bit more challenge releasing themselves from these particular roles, especially when you're thinking about dating and forming a relationship. So much of that courtship process starts to get traditional like that. And we're trying not to make faces here.
Yeah.
I don't want you to
No,
walk
we're
away
not.
thinking that we're judging, because we're not.
No, we're not.
And to many people, we would present as a hetero couple,
Right.
because most people don't know I'm transgender.
Right.
We're just walking down the street.
Right.
And so we contend with that too. There are plenty of things that I do, like open all of your doors and things that I just like doing for you, because I just want to show you, you know, it's like the peacock that walks around with his feathers out trying to get the girl peacock's attention. That's kind of like how I am with you. But that's even gender. How you would express that is different. You're not going to go like this and try to get my attention, because it's not going to work the same way. But it's so interesting, because these end up really being challenging for our relationship when we really split our relationship down. And even if let's say you're a person that's having these conversations right now with your partner, and you all are saying, well, I'm the masculine person, so I do this. I want you to stop having that conversation. If you say, I'm the femme, so I'm supposed to be like this for me, and you're supposed to be the person that makes more money, I want you to stop doing that. If we can operate in our strength, we'll have healthy relationships. Release anything that is about how someone is supposed to show up based on their genitalia. Because how crazy would that be if we carry that on for 7 more generations? You're supposed to be just in the house making my food because you have a vagina.
Yeah, I mean, that is so helpful. And I think I would also add, for people that are listening, if there are things that you like to do that are traditionally attached, let's say you are a cis woman and you really enjoy cooking. Something traditionally that a woman, quote in quotes, would do, it's okay if you like to do that and enjoy that. However, it's also important to release that from the gender. Like you're doing it because I like to cook, not because women cook. So it's not, I just wanted to add that it's not that we're saying that if you enjoy these traditional gender roles, that it's bad. As long as it's not attached to gender alone, but like you truly enjoy it, go for it.
Exactly, because that means that it's authentic and aligned. When we see, gender is only one part of who we are. So when we assign our whole lives based on one part, we're living in a fragmented way. We're not whole. And so when we break our relationships down based on gender, we're also fragmenting our relationships. That's just one part. What about the part of you that's Black? What about your lived experiences being from South Carolina, mine from Chicago? What about your lived experiences about where you went to school? Those are all parts of you that inform who you are. So if somewhere in there, you're a masculine person, assigned male at birth, grew up, you know, in a small town, and you were raised by your grandma and you learn how to cook, and you don't apply that knowledge in your relationship because a woman is supposed to cook, you're doing your life wrong. You are living in a fragmented way. You better get in that kitchen and cook with your wife just like she your grandma.
Exactly. And I would say also that gender roles, I feel like we often see them as like chores or things to do, but it's larger than that. Like, you know, you could think that, let's say the man's responsibility, this is in air quotes, if you can't see me, the man's responsibility is to protect. Protect is a very vast, big word with a lot of meanings. That could be protect physically, that could be protect someone's heart, protect the emotions, protect the
I think it means all of that.
All of that. So I'm saying, like, it's not just like, well, I'm the man, so I'm gonna
see, that's where I think gender is limiting our ability to understand language. And like, even if your role is protector, taking it out of that gendered lens allows you to see things like protect our heart. Protect his heart.
Because we all can do that, no matter what the gender is. We all have responsibility to do that in relationships.
Then we're getting closer to 50-50. Because we're all doing the work together and we're operating from strength. But we do all have an obligation to protect, you know, our relationship and really, you know, love one one another from a place of vulnerability, and really operating in wholeness allows for that. When we segment relationships based on gender, again, I'm going to say we are living fragmentedly in our relationship. And that is a challenge to having lasting, committed partnership. And I've unfortunately seen it a lot in couples therapy, where the masculine person is traditionally less vulnerable, less wanting to talk about their feelings, less interested in talking about the feelings. So it's usually the feminine person, the feminine identified person that reaches out to me and sends the email. And I'm like, is the other person on board? Yes, they want to come too. And they get there and they're expecting, I think often the masculine person is expecting me to have their partner's side because they're the one that reached out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm here for the relationship. Are y'all here for the relationship?
Right.
And I think that's wholeness. Because a lot of times when we cut stuff along gender lines, it can feel like a battle too. It can feel like you against me because gender makes us separate. It's anything in separation is against unity consciousness. It's about fear. It's about duality. It's not about oneness and togetherness. So we have to catch when we're doing that. Gender or just operating from one part prevents us from operating in wholeness in our relationship.
Right.
It's okay. Like Tiffany said, I think I love this point to really bring us home while we touch on one or two more things before we go, is that if you like something, do that because that is from your authentic and aligned self.
Exactly.
Remove or release the part about it that's like, I'm supposed to do this because of my gender.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that it's a game changer. Like when you come to the relationship and you're having these conversations, trying to really dive deeper into the gender roles that might exist, think about all the things you do and just throw gender out the window. Let's just literally throw it out of the window. Because 9 times out of 10, it's not inherently attached to gender. Like, let's just think about it, like you're saying, from a strength based, like, this is what I want to do perspective, because I think it makes for a healthier, happier, dare to say, relationship. If I'm doing what I love, that feels good for me, that feels aligned, whether it's congruent with societal gender norms, I'm going to be able to feel the effect. I will be able to feel the effects of that in my relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's going to feel aligned. I'm going to appreciate the things that my partner does because that's my partner's strength.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I hate when we get to the end of these episodes and it's like I have so much more I want to say. But I do want to say too, this for anybody that's dating and listening to this, a lot of times we are looking at people that we want to date along these gender lines too. And I want you to just review how this might be or might not be limiting your perspective. Very likely, if you're thinking about gender in any way, it's limiting your perspective to some degree. So I just want you to sit with that. So we started this segment called #LoveResources because we wanted to offer tools that will take this work from theory into practice. We want you to leave these podcast episodes with tangible tools for you to apply to your life. So I think our love resource here today, our #LoveResource, is really going to be some tangible tools about how to have these conversations about gender. I would say the first thing, then I'll let Tiffany come in with her second. The first thing here around having these conversations is understanding. It's like we really want to understand what messages our partners got about gender growing up.
Yeah.
Throughout their life, what expectations did they come into the relationship with around gender? What did they learn about their gender? The good, the bad, the ugly.
Yeah.
Because some of that stuff they're carrying with them, not all of it has been released. And we need to get to the bottom of that because we should co-create these conversations. We don't want to be in judgment of one another. We want to hold compassion and empathy so that we get to the bottom of what those gender expectations were so that we can release them together.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then I feel like a follow up to that is to not assume when we're in these relationships, not assume that because this person is of this gender, they're going to do this thing or they're going to act in this particular way, but be curious. I think it's very similar to
So number 2 is be curious.
Be curious. Like be not just assuming what will happen or how they'll behave or what chores, for example, that they will want to do, but ask. Talk about where your strengths lie, what you enjoy, I think that's super important. So being curious.
Yeah. And then our third resource here is to really find the various ways that gender has creeped into your relationship and challenge yourself to explore whether or not that is authentic or whether or not there are some things that you need to change. And then I challenge you to change them.
Yeah.
To live more expansively in your relationship, to really walk away from this episode hearing and understanding that if gender has been a focus or a way that you've divided your relationships, you have created division in your relationship. It is a practice that separates and it does not bring us back together.
No.
It puts us on opposite sides of a relationship. You hold your things over there, you hold those things over there, versus us holding all the things together, operating from strength. And so that's not to say that gender is a bad thing, but when we apply it to our relationships as though that's all of who we are, we really miss the larger picture.
Exactly.
So I'm going to pause us there. This has been #LoveGoals podcast with Moe Ari
and Tiffany.
Have a great day and be well.
Bye. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe.
If you want your question featured in an upcoming episode of the #LoveGoals podcast, go ahead and send your question to lovegoalspodcast@gmail.com. Check out our website at lovegoalspodcast.com and follow us on Instagram at lovegoalspodcast. We look forward to hearing from you soon.